Bum, 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 hey, bum, bum, bum. Ladies and gentlemen, KocoSports.com proudly presents 5 stars or better. We are your host. I am the sexiest man on all of Internet Wrestling Radio. That's right, Boom Boom here, shaking the room, live from Mobile and Sweet Home, Alabama. And of course, joining me there across the pond, my buddy, my amigo, Dave Coco. And for those of you maybe a little new to this, what we're doing is we're going down the list here of the list of matches that professional wrestling journalist Dave Meltzer ranked 5 stars or better. So we're going to take a look at it. And today, Coco, we have landed on when tag team partners collide here, we have the Crush Girls, or excuse me, the Crush Gals going at head to head. We have Chigusa Nagayo and the Lioness Asuka. They collided in All Japan Women's Wrestling on February 26, 1987. Coco, to kind of give you some context for this, most people thought this would be something like the Mega Powers, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, finally going at it here. I wouldn't compare it to that, Coco, because Hogan and Savage were already established single stars. They were larger than life, and they put them together as a tag team. They did some amazing things, and then they broke up. Well, this one is a little bit different. Chigusa Nagoya, and if I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize, and Lioness Asuka were a tag team. I've gone over their history back when Asuka took on Jaguar Yokota. So if you missed that, I pretty much lay out like the whole history of the Crush Gals.
And I
So
just want I'll just add we will be adding that link to the description along with the match because I love reviewing matches and like I just want to see the match. Like, okay, you.
Yep.
This is for you. The link's in the description. Go on.
So let me kind of give you a little bit of context about this match going into it. Is that the Crush Gals were, to say that they were over was, it's a complete total understatement. These ladies were fucking over. The closest thing I could think of as far as where these two were in their career, the closest analogy, like the modern day comparison I could throw it up against would be like Edge and Christian. Because they were an established tag team. They were very successful. And at this point, they had abruptly stopped wrestling together around, this was February of 87. They had stopped wrestling almost the year before abruptly in May of 1986. And Nagayo, she had actually gone on to the finals of the 1986 Japan Grand Prix. It's kind of like that was All Japan Women's Wrestling's, like, I guess you could say it was like their Champions Carnival, their G1 finals, their wrestle. It was a pretty big deal. And but anyway, this match here at the time was the number one contenders match for the WWWA World Singles Championship. And Coco, this match right here was pretty damn hard hitting. So I want you to set the stage for everybody who's watching this. Maybe they wanted to see if this match is worth their time. We're going to have a link down here in the description. And let me ask you this, Coco. Just set the stage for us. What are you seeing? First impressions.
First impressions is like it is too crazy over people, and a lot of people compare him to Hogan. I think they were more popular than Hulk Hogan.
After seeing that and all the hype, that I've done on the research that I've done, I'm inclined to agree. I mean, the place was packed, and they were chanting and cheering for these people. I love you, Japan. They had like their specific cheer for each of them, and they delivered.
And the thing is too, like Hogan internationally is bigger. Hogan through time is bigger, but right now, side to side, I think they were bigger. There are people that know nothing about pro wrestling and know about the Crush Gals. They were celebrities. They were big time superstars. They were big time wrestlers, and it was like, just imagine just the most popular human beings in America, but also they were great wrestlers. That's what
Hmm.
it was like. It was kind of like The Rock, except they were doing it at the same time. You know, it wasn't like, oh, I'll be a movie star later, or I'll be a football. They were crazy over. And the thing is, I know people that don't even like pro wrestling, and they're about our age. We're older, and they know the Crush Gals,
Hmm.
and like they just were something. They had the pop idol thing going. They had music careers. They were just legit celebrities, and the matches were pretty awesome. Everything was pretty good. So I don't know how to say this because it's more than a pro wrestling match. It was like an event, you know. It was just, yeah. So like it's crazy over, and not only that, but like living in Japan, like people that don't know about pro wrestling know about the Crush Gals, and there's not many wrestlers that do that. Like a lot of people, especially in the pro wrestling community and the Puro thing, they think in Japan everyone knows all these pro wrestlers, and that is not the case. The list is very short. Of course, there's super pro wrestling fans that know everybody, but I always think you're not over until the whole world knows who you are, or to like non wrestling fans know who you are. And I think in America you got Rock, Hogan, Ric Flair. I'm trying to think, who else do you think is that big of a star that like
Yeah,
if you go to a
it
non wrestling fan and say pro wrestling, they pop up? Maybe Stone
probably.
Cold. Maybe Stone Cold.
Yeah, if I like here in the United States, I mean everybody knows who, excuse me, who Hogan is. Everybody knows who Savage is. Everybody knows who Flair is. Everybody knows who the Undertaker is.
Really, I don't think so. I don't think the Undertaker's at that level. I don't like. I think if you go to work,
Hmm.
and you work at news, I think if you go to work and say the Undertaker, only half the people know who it is.
Um,
And if you say
maybe
Hulk
Dusty,
Hogan, everyone
maybe
knows.
Dusty Rhodes.
Well, that's a tough call. Maybe down south. I mean, you are in Alabama. Maybe down south, but yeah, it's a tough call. But in Japan, I think it's Chono because he became famous. Anoki, obviously. Giant
Hmm.
Baba. The Crush Gals. And I remember, when New Japan was at its peak. Go ahead. Tell me they're at their peak now. Embarrassing. Look at you. Don't know what the fuck's going on. Anyway, when New Japan was at their peak, there's only two wrestlers that everyone knew. It was Nakamura and Okada, and maybe Tanahashi. And I don't know why Okada sprung on the board so much. Maybe it's because he's, married to a celebrity. Maybe it's because, he was young and pushed to the moon. Nakamura, it's obvious. Look at him. You know what I mean? It's hard. It's kind of like you see that guy and you're just like, yeah, I know who he is. It reminds me of Macho Man. And I don't think many people know Naito as much as pro wrestling fans do. Like if I go to work and be like, "Yo, dude, Naito, Lij,"
All
like
right,
what?
Dave, focus, focus,
I
Dave,
am, but
focus.
the thing is that they were that crazy over, and they
Hmm.
were over in the music industry. They were over in the entertainment industry. They were over there. So and people still remember them. Not many people still remember wrestlers in the '80s in WWF outside of the wrestling world. And the thing is, a lot of times with a Hulk Hogan, with a big celebrity, they can't wrestle. They could wrestle, and people were excited. People remember this match for a very long time. As a matter of fact, this ain't the first time I seen this match, and I didn't see it. I did not see it. I didn't see it live. Obviously, '87. I was more into American pro wrestling. I was very young, but I remember coming here, and they're like, "Do you know the Crush Gals?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think I heard of them." And like I just remember the wrestling fan going, "Shut the fuck up and sit down." Like they're like the hospitality was over. They're like, "Oh, sir, welcome to my house. Oh, you like the pro wrestling? Oh, the good muta. I understand. Sit the fuck down and watch the Crush Cows." So, and on top of that, you know, they were groundbreaking, and I think a lot of pro wrestlers that say they're technical don't match up to this. If you like technical wrestling with karate strikes thrown in or martial arts strikes, I'd like to say it's mixed martial arts, but it wasn't that heavy on jiu-jitsu. I'd say catch wrestling, but that word is abused so much that everyone has a different vision of it. but we'll just use the word technical wrestling. I think they're better technical wrestlers than people that are praised today. So overall, this wasn't a pro wrestling event. It was just an event, if that makes sense. It was an
Yeah.
event that the world wanted to see, or at least, I'm sorry, the world of Japan. I know that sounds crazy because outside of Japan, they're just two awesome women in the 80s, but here they were more than that.
Looking at this match here, they come out, the crowd's chanting along with their music. Um, you have the introduction. They do a handshake. They have their introduction. Asuka wearing the black and white trunks. Chigusa Nagoya wearing the black and red trunks. Immediately, Asuka starts throwing kicks. The start actually does remind me of an MMA bout, with the hands up, and then they start working some locks and holds pretty early on. It's like one thing I noticed is that Asuka was when it comes to the two, Asuka was the better striker, but Nagayo, she was, in my opinion, the better map technician, in my opinion, because you looked at it, they started locking up. Asuka got the early advantage with the strikes, but then Chigusa Nagayo started dominating on the map. She, was working a half crab. Asuka would make a comeback with some strikes. The crowd was just completely into it the whole time. And one thing I noticed about this match is they started out really hot. They started out with a few strikes. They start, uh, doing some mat wrestling, some chain wrestling, and then boom, they slow it down. This is a pattern I kind of noticed in some of these matches here in the 80s is they would start out really hot, and then boom, okay, once everybody was into it, they'd slow it down. They would just make the use of the wrist holds. They would milk that headlock. They'd milk that arm bar. They would, let the crowd kind of simmer down a little bit. And it's like, okay, we've let them simmer down. We've let them catch the breath. Okay, now let's pick it back up again. So they started working submissions. There was a knee bar thrown in here. It briefly went back to the outside. It went back in. Asuka was then trying to work on the submission holds. Um, Nagayo again dominating on the mat. There was a huge spine buster by Asuka, big slam and a spine buster for a two. They were really playing rough in here. There was a use of a sharpshooter, the bow and arrow, a Fujiwara armbar. The crowd is just really, I think the crowd really added to it because they were really getting into it. There was even a tope suicida to the outside. So everybody who's like, oh no, they only dived to the outside net. No, they were doing that shit back in '87. We've got video evidence now.
Yeah, and I
Um,
just want to add something real quick. Boom, boom.
mhm.
Um, a lot of people that think of old school wrestling, I'm glad we're doing this, are full of crap. They're like, they
Oh
never
yeah.
did this, they never did this, and they did. And on top of that, I just want to add something else. If you watched Japanese female wrestling, it's hard to take the Divas division seriously. And I just think that these girls could go now, and there was just this era of mainstream pro wrestling that held women down, and it's sad that some of those girls are known as pioneers when these girls were rocking it way before that and doing amazing things.
Oh, absolutely. One of the highlights was Asuka locked a giant swing on her tag team partner like 3 times in this match, and hell, I got dizzy watching it. Nagayo was hitting German suplexes. I mean, this was pretty hard hitting. And then towards the end, you could see Asuka start to get the upper hands. Like she was kind of starting to dominate on the mat, excuse me. And they just keep going. But to her credit, Chigusa Nagayo would not stay down. She just wouldn't. And then, the referee was called. Or not the referee, the timekeeper had been counting down. The pace starts to pick up. The crowd gets a little bit more frantic. I mean, this sounds a lot like the match the Barry Windham, Ric Flair match we previously reviewed. Crowds get more into it. Then they go to a series of quick pins and roll ups, and then boom, time limit. Okay, so they stop here. It looks like for just the practical purposes here, just for this conversation, we're just going to call them like the young lions kind of come in, start tending to the athletes. The referee starts talking it over with the officials. They start talking with both competitors. I don't speak Japanese, so I don't know what was going over the PA. I don't know what they were talking about. But then the officials decided to give them 5 more minutes, so the match went in 5 minutes into overtime. This one, Chigusa Nagoya, she got the hit start, but Asuka, took over after a missed crossbody. Now Asuka was working her over, hits her with a pile driver for a two, another giant swing. Then the time limit starts coming into play. The referee or the timekeeper's like, okay, we're down to 2 minutes. We're down to 1 minute, and finally the bell rings. They've already gone to overtime. The time limit has expired. The officials start talking again, and then Asuka is declared the winner via referee decision. There's a handshake. They hug each other. A bow. Streamers fill the ring. The crowd's eating it up, and scene. It was just Coco. I don't know. Maybe I sound like I'm out of breath, but I was almost out of breath just watching it. Just look at the pace that they were going, and just the rate that they were working. It was nothing short of phenomenal. It was a hard hitting match.
Yeah, it's really funny because a lot of times people paint a picture of how the past was, and when you go back and watch a 5-star match in the past, you're kind of like, these people are full of shit. This is amazing. This is a fast-paced strike. I still think you put these two women, technically speaking, up against anyone. I always hear people use the word, "Oh, they're technical, they're technical, they're technical." This is 1987, and they're outworking you. So to me, it's great. The time limit draw thing. I know this sounds weird, but I notice a pattern about these '80s matches that they don't have anymore, but it added to the drama. And maybe it's because, they do this once a year, maybe, but it just doesn't seem genuine. Maybe it's because everyone buys into it. Maybe it's not over the top. But the confusion. Like, in this match, we were a little confused. The announcers were a little confused. People were talking about it. People were checking them out. You know, um,
Yeah, because it's like, well, this is number. I can only imagine. Like I said, I do not speak or understand any Japanese whatsoever. Neither does Dave, amazingly. Um, they're talking, but I'm kind of getting from body language, from the tone of the voices, that it's okay. Well, this is a number one contenders match. Both these ladies have went to the time limit draw. What do we do? Do we keep going? Do we have to have them face the champion one after the other? Do we have to have a three-way here? What do we do? And finally, the decision is no, we're going to give them 5 more minutes. And then after the 5 minutes, it's kind of like MMA where you go all 5 rounds, and it finally goes over to the judges for their decision. And then it's like a 2-1 split. That's what it looked like in this one, and plus I think it worked out in the favor because one, you can kind of see how the referee declared Lioness Asuka the winner, because it looks like towards the end she was really dominating, but you didn't have Chigusa Nagoya. She didn't look bad either, because yeah, she kept taking German suplexes and pile drivers, including a tombstone, and she kept kicking out. She kept getting back up. Now, I think some people may criticize. Well, I'll get to the criticism later, but you see this. It's added to the drama, and then the referee just said, "Okay, you know what? I'm just going to award the match to Lioness Asuka. Basically on points, for lack of a better term." They shake hands. The crowd's happy. The winner looks good. Because they went through this. They went through hell, and then they're gonna, be the number one contender. But the loser doesn't really look like the loser, because it's like, well, it was the referee's decision. It could have went either way. She didn't get pinned or submitted, so she doesn't look bad. So everybody, for the most part, walks away happy.
But yeah, overall, it's pretty good. The big thing is, Nagayo. She was the more popular one, but people saw Asuka as the stronger one, the tougher one, and I think they both played those roles pretty well. And it was one of those where they protect their stars so that each of them could tell a story and build up to a bigger match. So I
Right.
think it was a great match. Um, I'm not one for draws. I'm not one for crazy finishes. But to me, it just seems like in the 80s, they mastered it with the confusion. They mastered it with, hey, we don't go every week, you know? And I don't know. I enjoyed this tremendously. And, I'm going to ask you, usually you ask me, but I'm going to ask you, do you think this match holds up today?
I think it does. Now, I think if now this one you could put on AEW's Women's Eliminator Tournament, or you could put this on Stardom, you could put this on Shimmer, uh, and it would hold up. I think the crowd would absolutely eat it up. The only thing I could see maybe happening is maybe some people criticizing, particularly towards the end, because you know, I don't want to say Chigusa Nagoya was not selling, but she kept taking, I mean, like, he took it a pile driver, taking a giant swing, taking a spine buster, taking, God, what else was there? Pile driver, German suplexes out the ass, man. And then she kept kicking out at two every time, and then would bounce back up and run around, like nothing had happened. I think there might be some people, some nitpickers who would probably pick apart at that, but if you were to overlook that part, yeah, I think it still holds up, and I think audiences would enjoy it today.
I'm just going to play devil's advocate here, and I'm the devil because I believe this. It's just, if there's a big match, you can do that. Like, it's one of those people, like, at
Hmm.
Wrestle Kingdom, at WrestleMania, at something that, people consider an event and not a pro wrestling event. You can do that. It is the best and biggest moments. Now, do you do this every week? No. Do you do this every. So I just put those people aside because I say, how big is the event? If it is just a house show, maybe you have a point. If it's every week, you have a point. But it is the biggest stage of these women's career, you don't have a point. Do you follow what I'm saying? Like, there's a time
Oh yeah,
where you got
absolutely.
to go
Okay,
all
okay,
out.
yeah, yeah, you saved it there a little bit, so I can definitely see why Dave Meltzer gave it 5 stars. I think it earned the 5 stars, and I think the match holds up today.
I think it holds up today as long as you're not in the pervert audience. Like, if you're not looking, I'd hate to say it's the diva audience. I hate to say it's the pervert audience, but the audience that's like, oh man, I just want to see hot chicks for 2 seconds bounce around and be silly. If you actually are into women's athletics and pro wrestling or just in general in ring abilities, I think it still holds up 5 stars.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. Now, if you want to know what happened after this, of course, Lioness Asuka would be declared the number one contender. However, she would not go on to win the WWWA World Single Championship. After this match, Nagayo would go on to win the 1987 Japan Grand Prix, and then she would eventually go on to beat the champion Yukari Omori, excuse me, Omori for the championship, and she would be the first of the Crush Gals to hold that championship. Now, she would lose that championship in August of 1988 to the Lioness Asuka. Now, she immediately vacated the title, citing that, during the match, Chigusa Nagoya hurt her arm and said that no, she wanted hurt 100%. So they had, I think that was just really to kind of write off Nagao because she went on like a tour, like, I think on like Mexico, and she just went on an excursion, if you will. But they had the rematch in January of 1989, and Asuka won clean. The Crush Gals would actually reunite in 1989, and they would win the tag team titles in March, and they would have to vacate it in May when Chigusa Nagoya turned 26. Now, if some of you are wondering, like, well, why did she need to retire at 26? If you go back, way back in the Wayback Machine and look up the previous match here with Lioness Asuka, and I'll lay out like All Japan Women's Wrestling, is they had a mandatory retirement. Like once you turned 26, you were done. And well, and as I mentioned in that one, this actually created other women's promotions who then started using AJW as like their feeder league because the women were still wanting to wrestle. They were still popular. They were still over. So, okay, you're okay. We'll get them at 26 when they're already polished. They've got an established name, so we'll take them. So that came to bite AJW in the butt. But
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that
mhm.
women's pro wrestling was at its peak, and I think this dumb rule, is the reason why there was a dip. And I still think that it's why Stardom and Ribbons and all the others today are trying to rebuild. I think this rule was so over the top damaging. And, if you can have a time machine and go back, what if this rule didn't exist? Like
you
how
know,
much farther along
back
would women's
then,
wrestling be?
yeah, back then. I mean, now today it sounds stupid. It sounds absolutely stupid. But, and I'm not defending them. I'm just saying that it kind of makes sense because I mean, remember, you don't have the internet. You don't really VHS and all that stuff is kind of is still coming along at the time. I mean, it's popular, it's there, and there really wasn't any competition. So yeah, you could do that. Well, some people eventually figured out, well, hey, these girls still want to wrestle. They're not green anymore, so we don't have to train them. They got marketability, and there's people who want to pay to see them, so we'll pick them up. But because eventually AJW got rid of that rule, and the Crush Gals would reunite in 1993. They'd do some matches. They also did some matches for the Big Egg Universe in 1994. And Chigusa Nagoya formed, I think it's Gaia, I think it's how you pronounce it,
Just
in
when it comes to
19...
Japanese names, just two sounds at a time. Nagayo, Nagayo. So yeah,
Okay.
good.
Yeah, so she would form Gaia in 1995. And I mentioned, of course, I went through the bios of the Crush Girls in an older video, so you can go back and look at that. So it was I think this story had a happy ending here.
Yeah, I mean, and now that one, went on to be a promoter. Like we said, we
Yeah, they
reviewed
would
this
go
in
on. Yeah,
others.
they would. Yeah, be promoted, and that's why I said this at the very top of the podcast here that the closest equivalent I could think of to this was originally I went back and started thinking, was it like Hardys, or is it like is it like the Mega Powers, or was it Shawn Michaels and Diesel? What was the most you know common? What would be the modern equivalent of this? But I chose Edge and Christian because the Crush Gals were a tag team. They were first and foremost. That's where they teamed up. They got popular as a tag team, and they were super over as a tag team. They were amazing as a tag team. They went their separate ways, but they both saw success as singles wrestlers. So that's why I chose that. Now, I think the only difference is I think these two split up, like had a mutual agreement to stop teaming up. So I think that's the only difference. But the, I, I mean, that's about the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, it would just be like the Hart Foundation, except with two Bret Harts, or the Rockers with two Shawn Michaels. And that's why the Edge and Christian comparison is pretty good. And then two with Edge and Christian, where you can compare them. One had talent, and the other one was Edge. I mean, one was popular, but yeah, there's a popular one and a technical one. There's a stronger, so yeah, I could see the connections if Edge and Christian also could sing and promote. Well, who knows? Maybe that's in the future. Dude, well, I mean, they could sing. Remember the little wazoos? God damn those Wazoos. But yeah, overall, these girls make history, and I'm hoping because of the internet that not just because of us, that's kind of douchey, but just because of the Meltzers and the people out in the world and the access that people will see the great things they've done. And yeah, overall, I think these girls can still hang today. All right. Booms, anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
Yeah, well, let's see here. I mean, we're going to keep moving along. We're going through the 80s here. We got some momentum going with this. We're going for the next episode, we're going to stay in Japan, but we're going to go over to the men. We're going to go over to New Japan Pro Wrestling because the next month, in March of 1987, we had a tag match that hit 5 stars. It was Akira Maede and Nobuhiko Takada versus Keiji Muto and Shiro Koshinaka.
Oh,
We're
we're
going
gonna
to
see
tie
some
it up. They
Muda.
tied it up at Spring Flare Up Night 21. So we're going to stay in Japan for this next one.
I'm super excited because the timing is great because Kenji Muto just won the Noah title. So it's going to be
As of
amazing to
this
see him in his
recording.
prime. As of this recording, yeah, I forgot these are timeless. Like that happened 6 years ago. Oh. But yeah, as of this recording. All right, Booms. I love you. Internet Infantry. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Check me out on Twitch. Check out DaveCoco.com. Booms, do you want to say anything?
Be kind to each other. Be sure to like, subscribe to us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Dave's Coco's books are available on Amazon.com. You have Operation Freak Show, which is not for the faint of heart, but then you also have Lucky the Orphan, which is also made for young adults, so that's a little bit more family friendly there. You'll also find Coco on Twitch. It's Twitch TV / KocoSports, KocoSports.com. It's your home for combat sports, where the world goes to kick ass, and most importantly, where it's okay to be a passionate fan.
And with that, I am over. Ba-na-na-na-na-na. Hey, ba-dum-bum.